Hello and welcome. I think I'm looking to see participants coming in. There we go. Welcome to the third Conversations with the Dean for the University of Delaware's College of Earth, Ocean, and Environment. My name is Jim Corbett. I'm a professor in the College of Earth, Ocean, and Environment in the School of Marine Science and Policy. And I'm here to welcome you and introduce our host and our guest tonight. In the audience, there are somewhere around 50 people signed up as of a couple of days ago, with some additions since then. And just to let you know a little bit about who you are, about 40% of you are alum. And if we combine faculty and staff together, a little more than 40% of us in the audience tonight are faculty and staff. And then there's a few other folks. There's some students that have joined us tonight. Welcome to the students. And then there are some other friends, parents, etc. So welcome to that. This is part of the celebration of our 50th anniversary of the college. And we're really excited about the series of events. This is the third event this fall. It will be followed by between 3 and 5 or 6 other events in the remainder of this year and into next year, even through June of next year. So we're very, very excited. The 50th Anniversary Committee includes myself, Sue McGeary, Jen Biddle, Tracy DeLiberty, and Evelyn Marmeyer. And I want to thank our committee for helping to plan these events. I want to now introduce our Dean, Estella Atekwana, and she'll be our host for tonight. And Estella's been the Dean here at the College of Earth, Ocean, and Environment since 2017. And she helped us lead through a new strategic plan, and she's helping us lead through these new interesting times, as the old blessing goes. May you live in interesting times. Our guest for tonight is Nancy Targett, and Nancy Targett, I could say Dean Nancy Targett, I could say President Nancy Targett, I could say Provost Nancy Targett, but she's here as a guest to talk about her time as Dean of our college. Nancy joined the university in 1984, and with a full program of research, in 2005 to 2015, spent a decade as the Dean of our college. And during that time, she was also the director of Sea Grant, and she won a number of national ocean leadership awards and positions to serve at the national capacity in ocean science and policy. She served for the University of Delaware as the 27th president of the university. And we were very, very proud to know that our little college 50 years ago produced that. And then when she left the university, she served as provost at University of New Hampshire, and now she does executive consulting for higher education. So with that, I think I've welcomed all of the people here tonight, and thank you very much, Estella. I pass it to you.
Thank you very much, Jim, and a big thank you to you and your team, the committee that's really been working to put together this event as part of our 50th anniversary celebrations. So, and I also want to say a big thank you to all our alums that have joined us from across the globe, and really want to say thank you to President Nancy Targett, Provost Nancy Targett, and Dean Nancy Targett for joining me this evening as we go back in history to look at the time in our college when you headed the college. And so I'm going to begin by asking you some questions, and hopefully we'll have a chance to give the audience the opportunity to ask you more questions. So this college began as a graduate college only. That was the dream. And it was a great experiment in marine sciences. So, but in 2006, the transition was made to add the Department of Geological Sciences, and the name of the college became the College of Marine and Earth Studies. And then the Department of Geography was also added, and the new name and present name of the College of Earth, Ocean, and Environment. So I was just curious, what was your motivation for expanding the College of Marine Studies to include these two departments and transitioning from a graduate college only to include undergraduate students?
Thanks, Estella. It's really a pleasure to be back home, as it were. So thank you so much. Love to have the opportunity to reminisce a little bit and to think about how these things happened. There were actually several drivers from my perspective, but what I want to do is just take a second here, a minute or so, to paint a picture of CMS when I arrived. I think that will be important in setting the stage, and I know you've heard some of that from Bob Biggs and from Carolyn Thorogood. But in so many ways, what was the College of Marine Studies was ahead of its time. It was really entrepreneurial. It focused on research and partnerships, and it focused on corporate partnerships at a time when that was really unheard of for units like ours. And the other thing that we did is we pushed technology. We offered classes simultaneously at 2 locations. And for all of us now sitting on Zoom, that seems kind of funny to think about, that this was something new. But in the late 80s, the 2 classes that were offered, there was no video, there was no internet. They were offered by phone. People had to send course syllabus or whatever by courier between the 2 campuses. Honestly, it was kind of like the Wild West with a stagecoach, but not quite that bad. But even up to the year 2000, it was a big deal with that. We had added video by that time, but we were really the only college that was doing that, and on a large scale at that particular point in time. So it's kind of quaint to think about that today in our Zoom world and in our video world. But at the time at the University of Delaware, CMS was pushing the envelope on that. It was also a time when marine work, marine studies, marine policy was done at the graduate level and not really at the undergraduate level. And those times have changed, and we've adapted to those times. But the drivers for this were that people, when I came in as dean in 2005, the people on the main campus referred to CMS as that boutique college. And what that meant to me is they didn't see us as mainstream. And that really worried me. Boutiques are luxuries, and I thought that it would be bad for us to be considered a luxury at the University of Delaware. So I thought that the solution to that was to have a bigger footprint and to be more integrated into the mainstream of the institution. So when I was, again, pretty new as dean, and the provost suggests that geology could come into CMS, and I responded favorably and said, well, that's a good start, but I think if we do that, we should also think about geography, which also had the environmental science program. And the idea there was to try to build that bigger footprint. And I think probably, as you know, we live in a shared governance world, don't we, in higher education?
That's
and
correct.
So it's not something that you or I as deans could do, or that the provost even could do. It really depended on the faculty in CMS and in geology and geography. So the first thing I did was to come back to CMS, and I sort of talked about the vision and what I saw as our precarious position, and talked to them about the idea of expanding the footprint of the college. And the only way we could do that, of course, was with an affirmative vote of the faculty. And at that meeting, they did take a vote, and it was the one and only time I had in my whole career that I had a unanimous vote in the affirmative, a unanimous vote of the faculty to go ahead and move ahead and explore this. And I thought that was a tremendous positive for the vision and the willingness to think about change of the faculty within the college. Then I went to geology, and I spent a lot of time talking with them. They were worried about the fact that there were differences in culture, and you alluded to that, Estella. at the time, the geology department was doing a lot of service teaching for undergraduates. And here we were, a college that didn't even have an undergraduate academic program, right? So, so there was a lot of difference in culture. And we talked a lot about that. And I told them that I recognized it, but that they had my word that we would work together to, if they came into the college, and we would both be stronger for it. Both entities would be stronger for it. Then I went on to geography. And if there's anybody on here from geography, you'll be that was in that, especially faculty that were in that meeting, you might be smiling because you'll remember you all said, no way, no how, we're not leaving arts and sciences. I was basically tarred and feathered at that meeting. And I left and I thought to myself, well, you know, they just don't quite see the vision as I see the vision. And I guess I have to work on that a little more. And so we came back and decided to go ahead and start with CMS and geology coming together, and we became CMES. And that was a little change, right, to the program. And then I kept working on geography because I knew it would be positive for them. I knew it would be positive for us. And so it was quite a bit of persuasion and negotiation. Faculty, the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences, he was still on the fence. The provost was slightly tipped over the fence, but he hadn't completely come on board. But ultimately, we got it done. It all came together. And of course, it required yet another name change. So I'm sure the faculty wondered what the heck I was doing in terms of changing the names of the college so frequently. But we got it done, and we landed in a place, I think, that is better for the college. And that was always the goal, to position the college well for the future.
That's a really interesting story. So I'm sure a lot went into the name of the college. It is quite a mouthful. And people are always wondering why we have that name, right?
Yes.
And so you did two things. So I'm interested in finding out about how did you land on this particular name? And secondly, you also did something that you now started a new undergraduate degree program in marine science. So tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so with respect to the name, it had to have the agreement now of all of the faculty, or of a majority of the faculty. And so there was quite a lot of discussion about, we could have been a college of the environment, maybe that would have been something. University of Washington was headed in that path. A number of other colleges in the country where it was a time of a lot of change, and not only in the ocean sciences and in ocean policy, but around environmental science, around geology. Geology was in a very dynamic situation at that point. Programs were changing focus quite. Stanford, I remember, did quite a large change in its program around 2005. There were some places like the University of Connecticut that voted to disband their geology programs. I mean, it was really a time of turmoil. So we had opportunity here, right? To come together in a way and trying to figure out how everybody could feel that they were recognized. And most importantly, so that the policy people, the human geography people, the people who did the non-physical science part of this felt like they were equal partners in all of this. And I think that was a really important component of all of this. So faculty worked on, we had names, we had lists of names, and we were voting, and you know, and just kept voting until we came up with the college name that we have.
That's great, that's great. And so how did introducing the undergraduate students, especially to the marine science faculty, how did they receive that? They've been used to just mentoring undergraduate students, and all of a sudden they had to deal with undergraduate students.
Right, so it was, in my view, and there may be those that would disagree, but from my perspective, I think it was sort of a natural evolution in terms. We had interest, and remember, in the then College of Marine Studies, we had a long-standing REU program that we had undergraduates there a lot that did, so we had undergraduates on the campus quite a bit. We taught a number of undergraduate courses, long-standing without a major, but just taught undergraduate courses. And so it was sort of a natural evolution when people were expressing interest in marine programs to move in that direction, and we decided to do that. So, and again, that was with, you know, the support. You can't do anything without the support of the faculty. So that was an important aspect of it.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. So you'll be pleased to know that, in fact, our marine science undergraduate program is the fastest growing major right now in the college. It's really, it's
That's wonderful.
It is wonderful.
It's wonderful.
And we now have, I think, over 430 undergraduate students in the college. And so
wow.
we hope to continue to grow that number, because we know that the times are right, I think, for people in the Earth, Ocean, and Space Sciences. There's a lot of interesting things that we need to work on, lots of grand challenges for us to work on. And so I've often said that we are the science of the future. And my expectation is that we should continue to see more students coming, you know, into the programs.
Yes.
So talking about the future and climate change and energy transitions, especially renewable energy. So during your time as Dean, you saw the installation of the wind turbine in the Lewis campus. And from what I heard, it was not an easy thing to accomplish. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, so I always thought that we should be a model for green energy. We should walk the walk if we were talking the talk. And we had such strength in our program around wind energy. At the time, Jeremy and Willett were spearheading the programs, Jeremy Firestone, Willett Kempton. And the three of us talked a lot together and saw the potential to try to maybe build a wind turbine at the Lewis campus. There isn't a lot of wind in Delaware inland. And so we thought maybe we could have enough wind at the coast that we could build a turbine that would support student experiential learning, but also research and development. And at the same time, we could be a model for others. And so we worked together to build partnerships. It was quite an undertaking. And as they always say, if I knew what I ultimately learned, I might never have started it. But the process was, it was a wonderful experience, not without pitfalls, but Jeremy and Willett identified a partner from the private sector. It was Gamesa Technologies. I have a longstanding relationship with people in the community of Lewis and worked with the mayor and others to get the kinds of permits we needed. We worked with the state, and then we also work with federal agencies and our federal congressional delegation to pull it all together. And of course, we worked with the University of Delaware. And I think that that first step, that first decision that we made, it was that we were going to assess the potential. Did we have enough wind energy here to support a wind turbine of the type, the commercial scale 2 megawatt of the type that we wanted to do? And I decided that although we had all the expertise in-house to do those analyses, that I thought it was really important to the credibility of the project that we hire an external consultant to come in and do that. And so we did. We hired an external consultant. And the second part of that decision, so then we knew we would have an independent assessment. The second part of that decision was to go to the president of the institution and to the CFO, Pat Harker and Scott Douglas, and make a pitch to them that they should give us $84,000 to do this independent assessment. And the idea was that we had the $84,000 in the college. That wasn't an issue. But really, I thought that the University of Delaware had to have skin in the game. And so we did the pitch, and we promised them, we painted the picture, we painted the vision of what we hoped. We promised them a great return on their investment, and we delivered on that with student experiences, with the corporate partnership, with the funding that comes back to the turbine from delivering net metering and delivering electricity to the town of Lewis, and then gets plowed back into the research programs around the wind turbine. All of that was great. And some of you know that one of my favorite phrases is go big or stay home. And this was one of those examples of that kind of project.
But my understanding was that you also had a little bit of pushback from the community. So how did you navigate that?
Yeah, so we did have some pushback from the community, but it was a certain sector of the community, and we had open forums at the lab. We tried to be as transparent as we could in terms of discussing the project, talking about it. We published pictures, renderings of what it would look like. We published it in the local papers, and there was one individual who chose to sue the university and to sue not only me, the institution, but the president. You always get in really good graces with the president when you get him sued. And we worked through all of that. That went all through the courts, and ultimately we were vindicated. We had followed all the processes and we had followed all things. And many of the people that had initially been involved and been concerned about it sort of fell away as we kept talking, and you know, they were some of the people on a particular street were worried about the look or the sound of it, and it was the same street my mother lived on. I mean, you know, so you could, and so we were able to just talk through, and it was establishing those relationships with people and trying to be as transparent as possible about things, even when the answer was uncomfortable. We tried to be as transparent as we could be.
Mm-hmm. That's really great. I mean, I think because of all those efforts, the University of Delaware now is known as a leader in this particular area, especially with you set up the special initiative on wind energy that continues to thrive today. Mm-hmm. And there was a center that was set up that's been doing, Jeremy and Nicole, they've been doing an amazing job. The revenue that's coming out of the wind turbine is providing scholarships for students. People may not know this, but there are. And then there's a wind certificate that students have to get now.
Yes.
And then I think last year we also launched an offshore wind skills academy. Excellent. And this is to prepare, you know, people that may be wanting to transition into this offshore wind energy area, and they can have an opportunity to come and learn and then use those skills to, you know, go get jobs. And my understanding is that this report that has just been completed that is estimating 80,000 new jobs in this particular area in the next, you know, several years.
That's excellent.
I think this was a great vision, and it continues to thrive. So the other major initiative that occurred, you know, during your time as dean was the establishment of a dual PhD degree program with Charmaine University, and this is probably the first of its kind at the University of Delaware. What was your hope for this program? And what do you see is the importance of establishing such global partnerships between universities? And it's a mouthful, but how can we use science for diplomacy? As you know, there's a lot of tension between the US and China.
Right. Yeah. So, you know, and as you well know, the University of Delaware was a pioneer in study abroad programs and has always had a strong linkage to those kinds of programs. And so I started talking with one of our faculty members, Xiaohai, about what we could be doing and who we might collaborate with in China. We had a lot of one-off MOUs and probably still do, and they're all very important and very good to have. But I started thinking that it would be great if we could have a more in-depth relationship with one institution, and maybe not just CEOE, but maybe if we could get more University of Delaware involved, so it becomes more of an exchange and across a number of disciplines. And so I talked to Xiaohai a lot about this, and he thought that the institution that we should collaborate with was Charmaine University from a whole host of things. They had a strong state key laboratory in environmental science. They had their marine programs. They had a whole host of other programs that were analogous to, and they were somewhat analogous in size to the University of Delaware at the time. And then there was a great partner over there, Dr. Minhan Dai. And so I made several visits with Xiaohai to Charmaine and started to develop the ideas of those partnerships. And we hosted people at UD for workshops from Charmaine. And then we had, because I wanted that relationship to be deeper, I invited some of the other deans, arts and science, engineering, et cetera, and the president, Pat Harker, to go and visit. And a lot of faculty as well at different times were exchanged. And they were not only from the college, but they were from elsewhere within UD. And so as a result, there were connections that were formed in arts and science, and engineering, and of course CEOE with Charmaine University. And for a while we had a Confucius Institute that was sponsored by Charmaine. And we had a lot of faculty members, George Luther, Dana Verone, Wei-Jin Tsai, a number of them who were partnered in writing large grants that aimed at collaboration, because there's no better way to cement a relationship. And of course, Shanghai was involved in those as well. But there's no better way to cement that collaboration than to have some sort of a project that you're working on together. And we were going to try to compare the Delaware estuary with the Pearl River estuary. And there was an NSF program that did these kinds of international relationships. There was a program in China that did it. But ultimately, the fact that we were even slightly in the South China Sea ended up being problematic from a political perspective. So that didn't deter our interactions and relationship, but it would have been better to be able to build it around some common programming. And I know that Shanghai has some common programming. I know Wei-Jin does as well. But my hope had been that for this deep exchange of ideas and people between the two institutions, UD's Emily Mong was a student and then did a postdoc over there. And of course, we hosted a number of Chinese students at UD. The exchange was not as robust as I had hoped, and at the time, and I hope we can continue to try to foster that. I still think it was valuable for UD, and I hope it was valuable for Charmaine too. And with respect to the diplomacy part that you talk about, I really do think that relationships that are built from common goals build bonds across the globe.
You're very correct. And so you did mention the fact that we've not seen too many of our students. In fact, just one student has actually made that visit to Charmaine and spent time there. What is your advice to students? Because before coming to University of Delaware, I have a very strong international research program, and I do value these international partnerships. And made every effort to take my students abroad. And so, what is your advice to our students? How can they take advantage of this partnership?
Yeah, I really do think the connection could be made for the graduate students. It could be made around research projects, right? And that's the way to do that. For the undergraduates, my hope was always that we could get a study abroad program going over there. They do offer courses in English, and so I always, one of the things that I thought would be wonderful would be to have faculty-led study abroad program that would go over there and take advantage of some of the things. It's such a beautiful area of China, and so I think it would be a wonderful experience for students to do that.
Yes, it is. And in fact, I had the opportunity to visit Charmaine last year.
Great.
It's a beautiful campus. And I even went to the Malaysian campus.
Oh, wow.
Malaysia is predominantly English. And the idea also was to explore the opportunity to see whether or not it could be possible for UD to have that campus as a study abroad campus.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. That would be wonderful.
Yes. So let's talk about transition to you shattering the glass ceiling of becoming the first female president of the University of Delaware. And as Jim alluded to this in his introductory remarks, you were the dean of the smallest college.
It's true.
So how did this happen? And typically, the path is you become a dean, and then you become a provost, and then eventually become a president. But you just went from being a dean to a president. How did that happen? How do you think your years as an experience as dean prepared you for this position?
Right. So it is true, I was the dean of the smallest college, but I was also dean of one of the most interdisciplinary colleges. So I was already thinking broadly about the institution and not in more traditional silos. And I think that helps a little bit. But remember, Pat Harker had announced that he was leaving. And he was the president, and I was in Washington, D.C. I was chairing the Consortium for Ocean Leadership, which is based in D.C. I was chair of their board of trustees. And my assistant, Sandy Moggers, called me and she said, the chairman of UD's Board of Trustees is trying to reach you. And so, you know, I was the senior dean at the time, and I figured he just wanted to talk to me for about ideas for people to name as the acting president, because they were going to name an acting president when Pat left and then begin a search for a president. And so I spent some time in advance of talking with him to develop a list. And when we got on the phone together, I launched into that list right away. And he listened politely. And then he said, well, what about you as the acting? And that was an unexpected turn of events, I have to say. That was an unexpected way. And so I listened to his rationale, and then I asked for 24 hours to think about it. And I went home, talked to Tim, and decided that I could have, as an acting president at the university that I knew well and worked across many units on, that I could have an impact in terms of preparing the university for its next president by bringing the community together, by working to maintain momentum. Because, you know, in this day and age, you can't afford, if you just stop, you fall behind. So you've got to keep that momentum going. And so it was an amazing opportunity. And the best part of it was that there was a great team in place, and I had a whole lot of support from the UD community. And I really enjoyed the opportunity. And it was a very big honor at the end of all of that for the board to name me the 27th president. So I spent the year as the acting president and ended it as the 27th. So I got my number, and that was very much of an honor.
So I need to remind them to put your picture in Holy Hand Hall then. Yes. So this position gave you a comprehensive view, right, of the entire campus. So how did you see CEO from that position? And what role do you think we could play on UD's campus and better strengthen our position on campus?
Yeah, I think UD's strength is its interdisciplinarity. It's the willingness of the people in CEOE to approach problems from different perspectives, to see different points of view, and to incorporate them into action. And I think also it's the, you know, we're not doing just the basic work, but we're doing, in addition to that, we do work that translates real time into impact and action. And I think that's a lot of what society needs now. And a lot of things that society criticizes higher ed for is for being in such disciplinary silos and unable to break out of them, that saying, look, real world problems are messy. We've got to think about them across broad perspectives. And institutions are doing better now. But I think that units like CEOE have a big role to play in that, because it's in their ethos, it's their values, it's how we think. And I think that is the real value of the college at the university.
I agree with you. So as you already alluded to, we have a really unique college, and there are few colleges like ours nationwide. And some of them that come to mind would be the College of Geosciences at Texas A&M, the Jackson School of Geosciences at the University of Texas, or even Oregon State's College of Earth, Ocean, and Atmosphere across the country. So how different are we from these colleges? What do you think our strengths compared to these colleges?
Well, I think that early on, I think that we recognize the importance of policy and social science in all of this. You can have the best science, but if you don't have the human behavior and if you don't have the policy to integrate it into action, then ultimately you're not going to translate it to where you need to be. And so I think early on, this college recognized the importance of that. Not only and so, you know, I spent 3 years chairing that consortium for ocean leadership, and what we saw in some longitudinal data sets that Russ McDuff from the University of Washington had was that there was movement away from pure ocean science as a standalone unit towards more ocean science and policy units that were integrated as equal partners into a larger environmental footprint. And so when we brought out, and we were in the vanguard in terms of that dynamic time, in terms of creating CEOE, and we not only had the strengths and the advantage of the ocean science and ocean policy, but now we were bringing in the physical and human dimensions of geography. We had the environmental science program and expanded it into the environmental studies program. And then we had the earth studies and geology that we were thinking about that tied a lot of this together. So I think that early culture of bringing policy and social science perspective is important, and it continues to be a hallmark. But I do think others are sort of joining that and understanding how important that is now.
That is really important. And if you look at, say, for example, NSF has a program on convergent science, right? That really requires that you bring different people to the table, including the social sciences, so that we can better understand these human interactions with the environment. And that's one of the areas that I've often felt that our college is really, really strong in. We're set really, I mean, it's like a unique college that is set right to be able to achieve these things. And so I think it was great that you guys perceived this earlier on when you set up the college. So my next question for you is that as you look back, what do you think most fondly about when you look back at the college?
I think it's always the people. I guess it's the people, it's the can-do attitude. And I think that attitude started with Bill Gaither. I think Carolyn certainly had that attitude, and it aligned with my go big or stay home philosophy. So I think that the can-do attitude of the people never said, no, don't do this. Don't. Everybody was, well, let's try it. And sometimes you fail and sometimes you succeed. And so I think it was the culture and the people, even, so, and not just, it started in CMS, but it continues through with all of the faculty and the teams that came together to create this new College of Earth, Ocean, and Environment, and to rethink themselves and to rethink their units in this time. And so I think that's the thing that I think about the most. And one of the things I enjoyed the most was in that culture was trying to position the college for the future, trying to think about it. And one of the things I always tried to do is to remember that I was a student at one time. I was a faculty member and am a faculty member and emerita now, and an administrator, and to think about things from all of those different perspectives, because it really does help you keep a grip on things.
Yeah. So talking about the future, the Earth is changing rapidly due to climate change impact. The demographics in the country is also shifting, and the job landscape is very dynamic. How should we be training our students to adapt to this rapidly changing world? And how can we turn these challenges into opportunities for diversifying our students and the faculty?
Yeah, it's a really dynamic landscape out there, isn't it? And I think that it's really important that we think about how we can positions. I think we always need to be self-evaluating. You can't get stale or stodgy. You need to be continuing to evaluate and think about what are the strengths, where should we be pushing to next, how can we position our students. And I think, you know, we need to position our students to be able to communicate with the public and to do more in that realm, as well as to continue for them to do their in-depth research, but then to think in a cross-disciplinary way too, and to be more open to other thoughts.
That's great. So you probably had a very ambitious list of things that you wanted to do. And was there anything you left undone when you moved on from being the dean that you wish that I would accomplish?
So, you know, when somebody leaves a position, I always think that they should have a sense that they're not done, right? Because otherwise, if they feel like they're done, then they're coasting, and that's not good. So you should have a sense that there are things that aren't done. And for me, I think when I left, it was the opportunities to partner with industry in new ways. And Mohsen Beatty and I were working together on something, on a vision that was similar to something that was used at the Applied Physics Lab at the University of Washington under Jeff Simmon when he was there. And that was where industry partners and faculty worked together. The students had these experiential learning opportunities that were amazing, that were facilitated by these partnerships. And we kind of had a vision where we could get institutions, selected institutions across the country to hang together in sort of an alliance that would help facilitate exchange of ideas and students. And it was pretty exhilarating to think about. And we made some significant progress. We actually had plans developed to renovate a building that was then on Star Campus. I don't even know if that building's there anymore. It was in the back. To sort of get this kind of, maybe it was a preview to Makerspace, which you now have on the campus. But to get this together and to get the faculty and industry partners involved. What we saw at the UW Applied Physics Lab was really exhilarating and exciting. And we thought that with the culture that we had within CEOE, that we could bring some of this. I think both of us thought it was the future. And when we brought that Ocean Gate mini sub to the university for a visit, that was part of the beginning of that effort. Some of you might remember that I did fall overboard from that, yet another time that I fell overboard into the water, but that was not supposed to be part of the visit, but it ended up being. But I survived and ended up going on the sub that day too. Anyway, something like that kind of a partnership, I think, is the future.
That's great. So my last question for you, I know the participants are itching to ask you questions. So what parting advice do you have for me as Dean on how to build on your legacy and to continue to move this college forward?
I think that, I think that the most important thing is to keep looking forward and to keep driving to innovate, to leverage technology to move forward, and recognize that we're in such a dynamic environment and that we need to just continue to keep the pedal to the metal to moving this forward. And to just, I think, Estella, the biggest thing is to create a culture or to create an environment where that culture that you already have, and it sounds like you have created this environment, is to continue, therefore, to create an environment where that kind of culture thrives with the faculty and with the students. That sort of can-do attitude and gee, we're going to try this and let's see where we can go with it. I think that would be the biggest thing moving forward.
Well, that's great. So this brings me to the conclusion of my questions for you. And I'd like to give the opportunity to the audience, our participants that are listening to this webinar, to ask you some questions.
Okay.
Very, very good. So this is a part where I will try to group and read some of these questions to you. And I want to let you know to begin with that they really build on this sense of community that you described. One of the things I want to point out is an observation, and maybe see how both of you would like to field this observation. That one of our faculty members posted a question that recognized that about 34 out of our 50 years of history have been led by women leaders in our college. And we think that's pretty cool. And we wonder if that, it's unusual if you look at universities sort of flatly. But perhaps in these interdisciplinary sciences, et cetera, maybe this isn't as unusual. You guys would know. So can you talk about how great it is that that's happening, and if it was something that was really, really unique to us, or if it was something endemic to the kind of mission that we do?
So I guess I will start and say, I do think that it was somewhat unique to, for the times, it was unique for CMS and then CEOE, for that that women's leadership. I think when Carolyn took over, I think it was very unique to have a woman in a leadership position like that. And I think that is, again, a testimony to the vision and the thinking of the people within the college. And so I think that's important. And one of the things I did want to remember to say is that diversity in all its aspects brings so much to the table. And we really have to figure this out in the environmental sciences, in the marine sciences. And there's a group that I'm part of that dates back to when I was an Aldo Leopold Leadership Fellow. And those folks are focused on trying to figure this out for environmental sciences. It's not good enough anymore to just say, oh, the pipeline. No, that's just not good enough. We have to be more intentional. And part of what I'm doing in my executive consulting with the search firm and on university strategy is to help institutions think about how to be more intentional about getting people into the pool to start with. And what I found is that if you get the people into the pool, the rest of it shakes out because you're getting really good people and the right choices are being made. So diversity is really important and we have to start paying better attention to that. Estella, yeah.
Estella, do you have something to add?
I need to unmute myself, and I would totally agree with you. As you know, in fact, coming to Delaware, I was quite surprised at the diversity that we have in the leadership here. I mean, I came from Oklahoma State, where at the higher executive leadership level, there was not a lot of diversity, and that seems to be a common thing across the country, right? We don't have too many women or female leaders, or there's not a lot of diversity at that level. But as you've said, diversity has to be intentional and it has to be deliberate. That's the only way, we can change anything. If we want to increase diversity, that's the only way that we can do it. We know that the geosciences in general is not very diverse. I mean, we are the least diverse when it comes to other STEM areas. However, we do a whole lot with women. In fact, there's a lot more diversity in women in our fields than in the other STEM areas. So that's a good thing, So, and you'll be pleased to know, Nancy, that we have been very proactive in our college. And with the Black Lives Matter movement, we have made some deliberate steps. And we have just launched a new website where we've publicly gone out there to tell the public the concrete steps of what it is that we're going to do to change diversity and to enhance inclusion at the university. So I'm hoping that we can be used as a model and other people will follow us.
I think that's wonderful. I think that is wonderful. And one of my proudest moments and most difficult too, hair raising, when I was acting president was, I wasn't very far into that role when we had a situation in September that looked in about the middle of September that looked like we had a noose on campus. And it just triggered a whole cascade of events. And the thing that I was most proud of from the UD faculty, student, and staff perspective was the coming together on the green to talk, listen, learn, and then the ideas that were put forward and to take forward for action. And so it's really an important issue for me. And I think that we need to make sure that we continue to push that envelope. And I'm so pleased to see that you have tangible ways that you're moving that forward.
So I have another question that comes from, it starts back at least in 2006. Rex Malmstrom and Cindy Hoover asked the question. They point out that they of course themselves met and married and have 2 kids. And during their time, there were at least 11 other marriages of CMS couples with 20 some odd kids now counting. And if we looked across the units and we looked across the times, I'm sure the numbers get bigger. What do you as deans think about this, what they call the hidden legacy of our 50th anniversary?
That is one of the things that you really have to celebrate, right? And no, we didn't call it the Love Boat. I promise we didn't. But but it is one of the things where students come together, common interests, discover a spark in each other, and it is one of the absolute delights that we as faculty members see when we see that happen. And Rex, I do still have that tape on my phone that you left for us that one time. So Rex will know what that means. So will Cindy. And the students make such a difference. We're all in this for the students, right? I mean, yes, faculty are the heart and soul in terms of the teaching at the institution and the intellectual merit of the institution, but it's the students who really are the legacy that we all have and why we all got into this. And so it's just such a delight to think about that and to think of how those students have come together in many different ways.
Well, so the next question, I've got a couple of more kind of weaving back and forth from inside stories and outside stories, but this one's a really nice one. It comes from Sam Hellings. In addition to just congratulations on how things have gone and your career, we're in a time where transparency and clear communication is really, really critical. And in your current role, consulting and advising executives in higher education, how do you continue to emphasize those qualities?
Yeah, I think those qualities are ones that, sometimes people get all tied up in looking at a resume or a CV, and they're looking at specific pedigrees, or they're looking at things. And what we try to tell people is, yeah, those are interesting, those are important. You want to make sure people are qualified, but leadership is more than just where you've been and some people are really good in the lab, but don't translate to be leaders. And so there's another quality, and some of that is around how well they communicate, what their vision is for the big picture. And it turns out environmental scientists, that would be earth, ocean, and environment, people tend to have really big picture views of the world. And they tend to take a more systems approach because they're used to integrating across disciplines. And so I think that one of the things I do in the consulting that I do now is to really urge people to think about it when they're going into these semi-finalist and finalist interviews, to think about, how is this person communicating with you? How is this person interacting? Do you feel the person's authentic and transparent? And so bringing those to the surface to make people aware of them, I think really helps.
Very, very good. There's another question which I'm really intimately familiar with, and we loved it as faculty, but I think I need to just set it up a little bit. Faculty meetings are not generally visible to the students or to the alums or to the general folks. But during the faculty meetings, you had a tradition that you kept very carefully, which was to allow the eldest faculty member to close the faculty meeting with some comments and wisdom. And can you talk a little bit about that tradition and any other key traditions that you had to maintain community with students or alum or friends of the university, but particularly with this experience that we all remember so fondly on the faculty?
Yes. And so I don't know what caused me to do it, but Gerard Mangan was the senior faculty member for a very long time. And he had such an amazing presence. He was a marine policy person, and he did global transportation, and he just had such an amazing presence. And so it was one of my first faculty meetings, and I just threw it to him and said, we're going to close with it. And then I held my breath. I honestly did not know what he was going to say. And he rose to the occasion. He summed everything up in such a wonderful way. And then I thought, well, what a great idea that is. And so then I continued doing that for as long as Gerard was alive. And then after he passed away, we turfed it, I think, to, who was the senior one then? Denny. Was it Denny? Yeah. And everybody rose to the occasion and would say something profound at the end of a meeting that sort of summed everything up. It was really a wonderful opportunity. Some of the other things I think about with students have to do with the graduate student symposium and the auction that used to be held, and my parking spot that I still hold dear, and the time that one of the students, Mustafa, bid against me, and he didn't even have a car. And I said, Mustafa, you don't even have a car. And he said, well, I was thinking of moving my office outside. So it was really quite a lot of fun. And yeah, and we used to host, one of the things we did, Tim and I would auction off a dinner at our house, and then we'd host, and I always would say we'd host 8, and then the cost would go up so high, I would say, we'll host however many. And sometimes it was as many as 40. And the students would then all chip in to this kitty that they had purchased for the auction. So it was a lot of fun. And the last one we did was we had done the auction, and then I moved up to the president's house. Tim and I did. And so we hosted them up at the president's house, and that was really fun. That was fun.
That would have been real fun. So the auction continues.
Wonderful.
I have made sure that I beat everybody to get because I was told, see, Nancy did this, so you better make sure that you have the highest bidding price so nobody can beat you.
That's right. That's great.
Let's see, there's a couple more questions that I can see, and we have a short amount of time. One of the questions, which might be, it relates to some things that we talked about during the earlier conversations with the Dean, is the idea that the industry would have a presence, there'd be experiential learning at the Lewis campus between Verdon and New Road.
Right.
And one of the alum are asking what became of that vision.
So, you know, early on, Bill Gaither's dream was to have this industrial park or research park behind the campus. And we had a lot of acreage there to do that. But he was way ahead of his time. Internet didn't exist. All this just traveling back and forth. I mean, now as we do remote meetings, you wouldn't think twice, but Lewis was considered too remote. The nearest airport was Salisbury. It was a hike to Philadelphia Airport because the Route 1 bypass wasn't in yet. And so it was, he was just way ahead of his time. And so, and ultimately that land was, the university sold a lot of that land off. It's now actually an open park, which is good. And then, but the folks who are down there have been really interested in remote sensing technology and have been leaders on that. And Art Trembanis, Mark Moline, and Matt Oliver, a number of those faculty members work closely with industry, and there is a lot of an exchange that's going on down there. It's just not quite the way Bill Gaither had originally envisioned it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I'd like to say that it is something that we continue to work on, and we signed an MOU with Ocean Infinity.
Excellent.
And so we're really delighted about that. As a matter of fact, I think Art was out today, if I'm not mistaken, to test one of their ASVs. They've sent us several of them already. Excellent. So I don't know if you've passed by, you know, the campus, and you're going to see that. So those are the kinds of partnerships that I really hope to continue to promote.
Yes. And
definitely the dream lives on, and my goal is to try to bring those industry partners to Lewis.
Okay. That is so wonderful to know, Estella, and I just so support and applaud you for that vision. So thank you.
So the last question that's on the record, and then I will we'll let the Dean wrap things up, is the question's written as, how do you feel about leaving your research behind when you went administrative? And it's in quotes. What I think I'd like to do is to say, what sort of things did you leave behind, and what sort of core things have you carried throughout the career, from research through leadership in the university to leadership advice for others in many universities?
Right. So I kept up my research for a long time when I was associate dean, and and a little bit into my time as dean. And then it just sort of petered away. There is no question that I remember I was doing the drive from Lewis to Newark almost every day. That's 90 minutes each way, 90 miles. I did it in 90 minutes each way. And so it was, it was a lot of time on the road. You could still do things because you were in the car and you could talk to people and get things done that way. But so my research did peter out, but there were some things that as a field scientist and that you just take with you all the time. You know, when you're a field scientist, you learn to make do with what you have. You learn to figure it out as you go. And I think that was something that I took with me. And a lot of that has helped to inform my thinking. And then towards the end of I think I told you the other day, Jim, towards the end of my deanship, I was doing some lectures for folks that were called Lessons I Learned Underwater from my hydrolab days. And again, that's the field biology kinds of things that you learn when you're out there, and it tells you a lot about yourself, and all of that sort of helped to come together to inform how I was as an administrator and a leader. And I really always tried to think about it in a way that would transform and position the college for the best future that it could possibly have, and the institution too. Best future is always what you were thinking about there. And I think that comes from some of that other work that I did.
Very good. So Estella, before I hand things back to you, I need to make sure I say a couple of things, and you can correct me if I get any details wrong. But first of all, I want to thank the audience for being here, and I want everybody to realize that in a very short few days, October 4th, I believe, we have Coast Day, which will be virtual this year. And so this event is not the end, it's the beginning of a year of events, and our standard event for as long as I've been here, Coast Day, will be virtual. And if you go to the CEOE website, you'll find details for how to participate in that next week. And then the next thing I want to say is that I think it's in early December that our 50th anniversary committee has a placeholder that we're talking about with our faculty and our dean for our next celebration event. And we'll be announcing that as we confirm those dates. Thank you very, very much for letting me participate with my actual voice and face and be part of the audience otherwise. And Stella, the floor, whatever you need to do here. Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you, Jim. And I really want to extend my sincere thanks to Bob Biggs, to Carolyn Thorgood, and to you, Nancy Targett.
Thank you. Thank you.
These wonderful conversations as we look back in the first 50 years. And we are transitioning into the next 50 years. Mm-hmm. And I am truly honored and really feel privileged to be leading this great, great college. It was a great experiment that started, and it's ongoing. We don't have the end of the story yet. We worked really hard last year and to put together a strategic plan. Mm-hmm. Because as I was thinking about the last 50 years, I'm wondering what we would do in the next 50 years. It required that we have a roadmap. And so for those of you who are participating, and if you've not seen that plan yet, please go to the website. And it's a strategic plan from 2020 to 2030, 10 years. We started with 5 years. And then it got so ambitious, and everybody asked me, are you sure you can finish all of these things in 5 years? So we expanded it to 10 years.
Great.
And the plan is called The Changing Earth, Working Together for a Sustainable Future. And we have 6 main goals on how we plan to chart, the next 50 years. And so I just want to close this by saying thank you again for all the alums who've joined us, and the faculty, the students, the staff. It's been great conversations. I have learned a whole lot about our college, and I am truly inspired by you, Nancy, and all the other deans that came before me. I'm really excited about our faculty. They are truly amazing and outstanding. And our students, they are the reason, why we are here. Mm-hmm. So thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you all again for the next event of our 50th year anniversary. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.